After the conclusion of a peace treaty between Austria and the Ottoman Empire in 1559, hostilities ceased. Despite the fact that periodically there were small border clashes in 1562, the peace concluded earlier was extended for another 8 years. Having extended the peace treaty with the Ottoman Empire, Ferdinand I did not plan to abandon plans to establish control over the entire territory of the former Kingdom of Hungary. He focused his main attention on the Partium region, which was part of the Principality of Transylvania, which was in vassal dependence on the Ottoman Empire. Back in 1561, Ferdinand I managed to negotiate with Menkert Balaschi, who ruled the Partium region. He raised an uprising against János Zsigmond and announced the transfer of the fortresses of Szatmár and Nagybánya, as well as the entire region of Partium, under the rule of Ferdinand I. The Prince of Transylvania János Zsigmond was unpleasantly surprised by this scenario and tried to punish the vassal who had betrayed him. He gathered an army and advanced towards the fortress of Szatmár, planning to return Partium to the Principality of Transylvania. Since Ferdinand I did not plan to return the previously received territories, he sent Menkert Balaschi reinforcements in the form of 7,000 soldiers. In the battle for the fortress of Szatmár, luck turned away from János Zsigmond, his army was defeated and he was forced to retreat into the depths of the Principality of Transylvania. After the loss of most of his army, János Zsigmond had to sign the Treaty of Szatmár, according to which he renounced the title of King of Hungary, and after his death, the Principality of Transylvania was to come under the rule of the Habsburgs. In 1564, Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand I dies and his son Maximilian II becomes new emperor. Since after the ascension to the throne of the new emperor, a peace treaty with the Ottomans had to be confirmed, an ambassador of the Holy Roman Empire was sent to Constantinople. As for the Ottomans, they perceived the annexation of part of the Principality of Transylvania as a violation of the earlier peace treaty. Therefore, in order to extend the peace treaty, Grand Vizier Sokollu Mehmed Pasha demanded that the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire return the Partium he had captured, as well as cancel the Szatmár Treaty imposed on János Zsigmond. Since Maximilian II considered the recently captured territories to be his lawful property, he was in no hurry to accept the conditions of the Grand Vizier. In turn, the Ottomans also did not plan to put up with the fact that after the death of János Zsigmond, the Principality of Transylvania would come under the authority of the Holy Roman Emperor. Therefore, they immediately began to take action. By order of the Grand Vizier, Mustafa Pasha at the head of the army invaded the territory of Austrian-controlled Croatia and, as a result of a swift offensive, breaking the resistance of the local garrisons, captured the fortress of Krupa. Already in November 1565, Pasha of Buda received an order to prepare a campaign against the Austrians. On May 1, 1566, Sultan Suleiman, at the head of his army, advanced from Constantinople. Historians claim that the number of the Ottoman army that took part in this campaign was about 100,000 soldiers, while the number of regular troops participating in the campaign was no more than 42,000. Back in February 1566, the Hungarian State Assembly decided to collect 2 florins from the peasants to equip the army. Additional funds for equipping the army were allocated to Maximilian II by the Imperial Reichstag, which, according to historians, also allowed him to assemble a huge army of 100,000 soldiers. The problem was that while Maximilian was waiting for the arrival of the soldiers he hired from different parts of the empire in the vicinity of Vienna, the Ottomans began to take action. Without waiting for the arrival of the main troops led by the Sultan, the Ottoman army, led by the second vizier Pertav Pasha, invaded the territory controlled by the Austrians in Hungary and began the siege of the city of Gyula. At the same time, the detachments of János Zsigmond attacked central Hungary. On June 6, 1566, Pasha of Buda, at the head of the army, advanced towards the Palota fortress and, having reached its environs, began the siege. Very soon after the start of the siege, the garrison of the fortress received reinforcements, which allowed him to defeat the army of Pasha of Buda and go on the counteroffensive, occupying the cities of Veszprém and Tata. On June 29, the main Ottoman army arrives in Belgrade and, after a short rest, begins to move towards the Eger fortress. On July 12, 1566, after a siege that lasted 8 weeks, the fortress of Gyula fell into the hands of the Ottoman troops. The main army of the Sultan continued to move, intending to oust the Austrian troops from the region of Partium. At this time, the Sultan receives news that the army under the command of Miklós Zrínyi defeated a large Ottoman detachment near the city of Siklos. This news infuriated the Sultan and forced him to, deploying the army, advance towards the fortress of Szigetvar, in which the army of Miklós Zrínyi was located. The vanguard of the Ottoman army reached the vicinity of the Szigetvar fortress on August 2, 1566 and began to build a siege camp. Taking advantage of the fact that the main Ottoman army had not yet arrived, the garrison of the fortress made a successful sortie. Having damaged the Osman siege camp, Miklós Zrínyi's detachments returned to the fortress again. On August 5, the main Ottoman army arrived in the vicinity of the Szigetvar fortress. Since, due to his advanced age, Suleiman was unable to personally command the army, he entrusted the leadership of the siege of the fortress to the Grand Vizier Sokollu Mehmed Pasha. Historians claim that a huge Ottoman army gathered in the vicinity of Szigetvar, consisting of 80,000 Ottomans, 13,000 Crimean Tatars and 7,000 soldiers from the Principality of Moldavia. The Ottoman army had about 300 guns at its disposal. It is difficult to say how reliable the data on the size of the Ottoman troops are. The number of the garrison of the Szigetvar fortress, which consisted of Hungarian and Croatian soldiers, ranged from 2,300 to 3,000 soldiers. The fortress was well defended and had its own artillery. Unfortunately, there is no exact data on the number of guns that were at the disposal of the defenders of the fortress. Szigetvar was surrounded by water on all sides and consisted of 3 parts located on separate islands. Before the start of the battle, the defenders of the fortress managed to blow up 2 bridges connecting the old city with the coast. Thus, to attack the fortress, the Ottomans could only use the bridges that connected the coast with the new city. The Ottomans surrounded the new city from 3 sides and began a massive artillery bombardment on August 6. After some time, the Ottoman infantry went on the attack. The Janissaries attacked the new city from 2 sides at the same time, because of which the defenders of the fortress had to divide their already small forces. A bloody battle began. The defenders of the fortress fiercely defended themselves, but suffered huge losses from the fire of the Ottoman artillery. After some time, Miklós Zrínyi realized that his people would not withstand the massive artillery fire for a long time. Therefore, he gave the order to start a retreat to the old city. The defenders of Szigetvar managed to retreat to the old city, and on August 9, 1566, the new city fell into the hands of the Ottomans. The old city was better suited for defense, since the Ottomans could only attack it over one surviving bridge. The siege of the old city began. The Ottomans stormed the old city for 10 days. Due to the fact that it was possible to attack only one bridge, which was fired upon by fortress artillery, the Ottomans suffered huge losses, but the city's garrison also suffered serious losses. On August 19, the Ottomans managed to break through the defenses of the old city. Knowing full well that on the streets of the city, the few defenders of Szigetvar would be destroyed by superior enemy forces, Miklós Zrínyi, together with the remaining forces, retreated to the citadel. Not wanting to lose people during the storming of the citadel, Suleiman offered Miklós Zrínyi to become governors of Croatia in exchange for surrender, but was refused. The siege of the citadel began. Ottoman guns bombarded the citadel almost non-stop. The fall of the fortress was inevitable. The defenders of Szigetvar were waiting for the assault to begin, but the Ottomans were in no hurry. On September 6, 1566, the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman dies. Mehmed Pasha was well aware that the news of the death of the Sultan would demoralize his army, so he kept it secret and the siege of Szigetvar continued. On September 7, the Ottoman miners dared to complete the digging and undermine the wall of the citadel, which collapsed from a powerful explosion. The Ottomans began preparations for the assault, and Miklós Zrínyi and the remaining defenders of Szigetvar began to prepare for the last battle. Having waited for the Ottoman infantry to launch an attack along the narrow bridge, the defenders of the fortress opened the gates and opened fire with direct fire from a cannon at the attacking enemy. According to contemporaries, this shelling claimed a large number of lives attacking the Ottomans. Taking advantage of the enemy's confusion, Miklós Zrínyi led his men in a final attack. The attack of the defenders of Szigetvar was furious and swift, but in the end they were surrounded by superior Ottoman forces. Miklós Zrínyi himself was killed by 2 Ottoman bullets. Almost all of his people were killed, and only 7 soldiers miraculously managed to escape from the fortress and stay alive. When the Ottomans entered the citadel left without defenders, an explosion thundered in the powder magazine, which claimed the lives of many Janissaries. Due to the death of the Sultan, Mehmed Pasha could not continue the offensive, so he was forced to turn around his army in advance towards Constantinople. At this time, the army of Maximilian II, consisting of 80,000 soldiers, stood near the city of Győr, but despite the retreat of the Ottoman army under the command of Mehmed Pasha, she did not start active hostilities. In June 1567, peace negotiations began between the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire. The negotiations lasted quite a long time, and on February 17, 1568, a peace treaty was concluded for a period of 8 years. Under the terms of this agreement, the parties retained the previously occupied territories, and hostilities ceased. A special commission was created to demarcate the border between the 2 states. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon.